Silicon Saxony emerged from the post-war rubble of the German city of Dresden to become Europe's semiconductor engine. The continent's biggest semiconductor cluster produces 1 in every 3 European chips. We speak with Frank Bösenberg, CEO of Silicon Saxony, to find out what it's doing to secure Europe's chip future and why Taiwan is central to that ambition. Frank Bösenberg is one of the key figures shaping Europe's semiconductor strategy, and he's the CEO of Silicon Saxony and joins us from Dresden. Great to have you on the program. I'd first like to ask you to explain the origins of Silicon Saxony and what it's grown to now.
Hi, Divya. First of all, it's an honor and also a pleasure to be on the show. Silicon Saxony is a term that is used in at least 2 meanings. It has become a brand name for our entire region, the Free State of Saxony. In fact, it was first coined by an US author of Time magazine as early as in 1998. And we as an organization deliberately chose this name then in 2000 when we were founded as Silicon Saxony. And as for now, it's the name of the organization and the region at the same time.
Can you tell us what it entails now? What kind of an ecosystem it represents now?
As an organization, we are proud to have more than 700 members, TSMC or ESMC being member number 555, by the way. And as a region, as an ecosystem, we employ more than 81,000 people in more than 3,600 companies in microelectronics, but also in software. That's an important part of the sector as well.
Okay, so you've explained some of what's in that cluster. Can you tell us what the main groups in that cluster, what the grouping is, and how they're aligned and how they work together?
One of the cores, as I said, is the software industry that is widely distributed over the entire region with big players such as SAP. And the other core and the USP for us really are semiconductor manufacturers. It's GlobalFoundries, it's Infineon, it's X-FAB, it's Bosch, and it's also the joint venture by TSMC named ESMC that all run fabs or are investing in those in the north of the Dresden city. And around that, a huge ecosystem of suppliers has settled down. So all the major suppliers you know from the semiconductor industry are there. And of course, there's also chip design in the region. So yes, it's an entire semiconductor ecosystem plus the software that runs on the chips.
All right. So speaking of the ecosystem, can you tell us how closely related or whether it looks like Taiwan's model that we see here in Taiwan, so-called Silicon Valley of Hsinchu, or is it very different in operation from that?
It's similar, but not the same. So Hsinchu as a science park concept that, of course, we follow very closely as a big benchmark, as a top-down created infrastructure. As Silicon Saxony, we provide a network. We do not own the infrastructure. So there are fundamental differences, but there are also a lot of similarities. In particular, the geographic proximity of the actors is something that unites us with Hsinchu as a science park.
In a wider context, when it comes to Europe's semiconductor strategy or ambitions, you were the former chairman of the Silicon-Europe Alliance, and I understand are still closely working to them. Firstly, what do you believe is their most important element when it comes to what their strategy is or what they should be focusing on? And how does Silicon Saxony play into that?
We are one of the voices of the industry, of the ecosystem within Europe. We teamed up with our European colleague in 2012 under the brand of Silicon Europe. The chairmanship of Silicon Europe rotates between the several clusters, so I had the honor to do this last year. This year, it's my fellow colleague from Silicon Alps, the cluster ecosystem in Austria. And we try to represent, first and foremost, the SMEs in our respective ecosystems. And yes, we have a voice on the Commission's table representing the interests of SMEs. So if it comes to strategy, our point is that, of course, it needs to be SME friendly. And as Europe, we also should closely collaborate also with international partners and make sure that the supply side that has been widely pushed by EU Chips Act 1 is also met by a certain demand creation under the Chips Act 2.
You know what's interesting in Taiwan? Everyone knows pretty much what a semiconductor is, and it is integral to Taiwan's economic existence to a certain extent. But how much do people know about semiconductors in Europe? How much do they realize that it is in everything that they use on a daily basis when you're talking about the average person?
I think that has been recognized now. People know how important chips are. If you go only one layer below, so a distinction between AI chips, memory chips, also very relevant power electronics, people lack some knowledge. Also, the public debate lacks some more appearances on that distinction. People know about the importance of chips or semiconductors, but there are many topics. We tend to say semiconductors are not rocket science. It's more complex, so it also needs a lot of explanation.
Taiwan, in many levels, is part of Silicon Saxony's operations. Can you give us a sense of how much it is involved, in which areas you would see Taiwan companies or Taiwan, perhaps, strategy?
I mean, Taiwan is without any doubt still the number one place if it comes to semiconductor manufacturing. So we look a lot to Taiwan in terms of benchmarking. As mentioned, the biggest investment project that the region has ever seen, the ESMC, of more than 10 billion investment, takes place now, driven by TSMC as a Taiwanese player. And as a consequence, we also see Taiwanese companies from the supply chain that are not yet here, exploring the region, coming here, settling down. And of course, it's our ambition to make this as convenient as possible.
And when you say as convenient as possible, what does that mean?
It means that Saxony, Silicon Saxony, and also Dresden as a city really have developed into an international place. But our ambition is not to be good or very good. Our ambition is really to be best in class if it comes to make it easy for international talents to settle down, for Taiwanese, for Asian companies, for international companies. So we always strive for the best. There's always room for improvement, also in Dresden.
All right, so I want to go a little bit more into that a little bit later in the program. But before we do that, I want to talk about bigger picture and throwing it forward to the future. I understand that Silicon Saxony aims for 100,000 semiconductor jobs by 2030. Now, what are you doing to get to that target? And how realistic is this given the pace that the semiconductor industry is growing and perhaps maybe the talent not necessarily keeping up?
So first of all, the 100,000 is basically an extrapolation that we did in 2022 based on the development of employees in the region. And then we just extrapolate and make the prediction that we will grow to this. And of course, it's capital and also energy can be moved fast. Talent cannot. So that's one of the constraints. I want to mention TU Dresden as an example that runs the Semiconductor Talent Incubation Program with Taiwan. So students from the TU Dresden, by now from other universities in Saxony and even from Germany, can spend half a year in Taiwan, including in the fabs of TSMC. So there are really quite some efforts in building this talent pipeline. So we are extremely confident that we will reach this 100,000 until the end of this decade.
When you're saying building this talent pipeline, what kind of cooperations does that entail? Is this Europe-wide, or is this something that's currently concentrated in Germany and in your area?
Now we triggered in some aspects, but the ambitions of creating talent are European-wide. And of course, we are connected to relevant initiatives. We are, of course, also in the kind of competition with talent recruitment in, let's say, the Veldhoven region or the larger Eindhoven region, the ASML headquarters or Grenoble's. But still, we try to align if it comes to attracting more people into STEM, in particular more women. So we have some joint interests, and I would say we drive some of the initiatives, but we also try to team up with partners in Germany and Europe, at least.
Yeah, the reason I'm pushing this point is it's because it's an issue that is currently being faced in Taiwan also, because the semiconductor industry is growing and demand is growing at an even faster pace, but not necessarily the labor force needed to sustain it. So I would be curious to know what initiatives you found actually work, or what you feel are gaining traction that could help you reach your targets when it comes to having the talent to feed that growth.
To be completely transparent, at the moment, we see also reskilling initiatives in our region, also in Germany, due to constraints that other sectors have. So retraining of people from the automotive industry, etc., is something that happens. Leveraging the very good talent base that is available in Germany and also in the region. Saxony is home to engineers, a lot of engineers.
So one of the other issues that could be a struggle in Taiwan is energy. Taiwan imports most of its energy. How is Germany, and how is Silicon Saxony in particular dealing with that as far as trying to keep up with the growth?
energy infrastructure as well as water infrastructure is nothing that creates any headache. We see the region and city extremely well prepared for mastering the growth of the industry, having respective measures. We are building as a region or as a city a new river water plant, and also the electricity grid is being reinforced. So all that is good. Energy prices are constrained, not only for the city, not only for the region, but for Germany, because the semiconductor industry consumes a lot of energy, and energy prices play, of course, a huge role in the competitiveness on a global level.
We did talk about this briefly earlier, that Dresden wants to attract global semiconductor talent. Well, do you think the city's bureaucracy and administration is prepared for an influx of the international talent that is needed?
It is, and it's even improving. But again, we want to move from improving to a best in class. German is the working language for most of the authorities. So that's something to address, maybe to switch to English in the future, at least making as many bridges as possible to the foreign community. Of course, we are addressing in particular Taiwan by now as a city, as we expect a lot of Taiwanese workers incoming at the building of the ESMC.
And which areas would you say are the Taiwanese talent coming from? Which sectors?
It's really semiconductor manufacturing. So again, ESMC will bring some workers over, at least for a certain point of time. And we want to do everything that makes them feel home in Dresden or Saxony, as at least for the time they stay here, as long as this may be.
Now, one of the conversations that often they have here within the industry is how Taiwanese talent works here, how their engineers work. And I believe it's very different from how, I would say, labor laws work in Germany. Do you think that is likely to cause any frictions? And in that case, or what would you say you're doing to ensure that it's a smooth transition for the Taiwanese workers here, and also the whole ecosystem works for both the German workers or the other international workers and the Taiwan workers? I
would say some friction, it's natural but manageable. The semiconductor industry per se is globally standardized, and of course there are differences in hierarchy, in communication style, etc. But again, as the industry is global, we are somehow used to cultural differences. Taiwan or the Asian community, of course, gives a different flavor maybe, but it's not a totally new dish to stay in this picture. And English is the standard working language in these environments in most of the companies. So within the working environment, also adaptation is considerably easier than, let's say, in getting your local driver license, where you need an intermediate sometimes. But we are experienced, Taiwanese companies are internationally experienced. So yes, we see some, I would call it challenges, but they are definitely manageable.
So when TSMC/ESMC begins production in Dresden, what do you think changes most for the local ecosystem? And when do you think the first chips will start rolling out?
I can't say anything to the last part of the question. So what I can say that the ESMC, to all that we know, is fully in plan. That's also important, because sometimes you hear some statements that Germany would be slow. So Bosch opened its fab earlier than originally planned. On 2nd of July, we will have the Smart Power Fab by Infineon opened, 3 months ahead of schedule. And also the ESMC plant is, according to everything I know, fully within the schedule. So what will happen? It's something that we see already now after the decision in 2023 or 2024. Dresden or Silicon Saxony moves from an important European cluster to a globally relevant node. So we really see an increase in our global visibility. And I would say this interview and this appearance on this channel proves my point.
What would you say are the risks of dependency or misaligned priorities between the global giants that you're seeing or you're creating and the regional clusters in existence?
I mean, we are a relevant part of the ecosystem already, and that's not due to the existence of one single player, but it's really this functioning as a cluster. We have four fabs running right now. With ESMC, it will be 5. We have a mask house here by Texkent. We have the Jenoptik fab. We have the wafer sites in Freiberg by Siltronic and also by Freiberg Compound Materials. So we really want to contribute to the resilience of Europe as a region. That's always the scale we look at in comparisons. But no matter how big Silicon Saxony might be, we need to act together as Europe, at least. The semiconductor industry is global, will remain global, and we try to navigate our way through all geopolitical challenges that are appearing right now.
Right. The semiconductor industry is global no matter where you are and has a very, very complex supply chain, which involves many, many countries around the world. So what would you say, given the situation right now, and you brought up the possible geopolitical issues, what would you say is the impact of a prolonged Iran war for Europe's semiconductor industry?
Yeah, the longer the Iran war lasts, the longer it comes from a supply chain distraction or fragility to a really structural vulnerability. So we see a lot of helium coming from there. It's again a manageable risk, but it has an impact to pricing. We had in German TV just this morning that the cost of fertilizers rose to this war, and this is something that consumers will realize later on only. So the longer a Iran war will last, the more impact we will realize in the region, mostly financially. The semiconductor industry here is extremely well aware of any supply chain disruptions, not only since the Iran war. So again, there is no imminent risk of production stop or anything, but of course it will have an impact to pricing, and again that's relevant for all economic effects.
Yeah, that's right. And that is also why many countries are looking to be able to control more of their supply chain and also have some sort of chip sovereignty. And I understand that's something that Europe is planning or would like to also in the near future. Can you explain their ambitions for that?
Yeah, under the CHIPS Act 1, the European ambition was to have 20% market share. In the meantime, I would say the opinion is slightly shifting, and we are really expecting and looking forward to the draft of the EU CHIPS Act 2 next week, so on the 3rd of June. For Europe, I would say the right ambition is not market share, it's indispensability. So Europe needs to secure its spot. We have globally highly relevant players like Infineon, like ST, like Bosch, like NXP, that of course should defend their role. At the same time, more resilience is something Europe has to strive for, and we expect the CHIPS Act to contribute to this.
And I understand your experience and your expertise would have been taken into account for Europe's CHIPS Act 2.0, as you said, that's coming up. Can you tell us what you feel are the most important points of that act that will help Europe towards chip sovereignty?
Yes, in fact, we have been a co-signature partner or co-signing partner of the declaration or of the report that the Industrial Advisory Group gave to the Commission. We also issued a statement as Silicon Europe per se. Beside the SME friendliness that we already raised up, demand creation or addressing the demand from several sectors and streamlining demands, making it visible also to the industry. So closing this gap from the quite successful supply chain push or supply push to really demand creation is one of the biggest challenges within EU CHIPS Act 2.
Can you explain that a little further when you mean addressing the demand and then aligning that with the supply chains? Exactly which sectors are you looking at, and where is the growth in demand that you feel that the supply chain needs to, or the supply needs to align with?
It's all sectors, but sometimes the sectors need to be aware how crucially important semiconductors are for their own innovation chain. So the view is often to automotive industry, which is still very relevant in Europe. But of course, we also look to some extent to the defense industry, and also the AI industry per se is something that is not yet connected enough to the semiconductor scene as to our perception. So we have a lot of data centers, we have so-called AI gigafactories that are planned, but we do not have any advanced node manufacturing within Europe. We also do not have the huge design houses yet that could be the clients of ESMC. Still, we use the chips. And so there is a gap to close between demand on all sectors, including the very relevant mature nodes and power electronics, up to leading edge chips. And I do not even mention memory, For sure, you had the memory prices already. And maybe as a short history excurse, the rooms I'm standing in right now are former Qimonda rooms. That was the memory daughter by Infineon that went off market in 2009. And that was the time when Europe lost its only, or the largest, and by then only memory producer.
Oh, that's so interesting. Given all of this, I guess, deficit, how much do you think that is perhaps maybe slowing down Europe's progress when it comes to AI and the other sectors we see in the US that are thriving?
We see the right speed or the right recognition also by policymakers on the strategic importance. So what we need to master is to set guidelines, strategies that really give the guardrails for the industry in the long term, but improve in decision making on single projects, etc. So we need to find the right balance between quick decision making and a long-lasting strategy that lasts really beyond one election cycle. And Europe is on the right way in this regard, as is Germany. But it's the same as in the framework conditions for international talents. The better is always the enemy of the good.
The better is always the enemy of the good. And so, saying that, Europe has been trying to strengthen its whole chip ecosystem, and Taiwan has been integral to that. So in the future, do you see Taiwan's role as more collaborative, or does it become competition at some point?
No, I don't think so. I think that, first of all, I want to raise this from the German to a really European level. And then my point on that would be that Taiwan and Europe should not just trade with each other, but they should build resilience together. And semiconductors are an integral part of this resilience.
Finally, as we see the geopolitical situation, whether what we're seeing in Iran now or whatever else happens to come up, it doesn't seem like things are going to particularly calm down in any area, particularly with supply chains and the global supply chain disruption. So how would you say Germany and Taiwan should cooperate together to mitigate those kinds of disruptions?
So the role of Taiwan cannot be overestimated in this regard. And Germany and Taiwan are already strong cooperation partners. I mentioned the STIPT program for talent exchange, and we expect this path to be going on further away.
Where do you see Silicon Saxony towards the end of this decade? What kind of a role will it be playing in Europe's chip sovereignty?
We are Europe's biggest microelectronics cluster by now. Of course, we want to defend this role. We want to support also other regions within Europe in developing as clusters, as Europe as a whole has a growth potential. The industry is growing. It's really growing in tremendous speed, and not everything can and should be done from Saxony. So we want to give support to other regions. And in 2030, we still want to be Europe's biggest microelectronics cluster that has become a home for at least temporarily for people from Taiwan, that is recognized globally as it is what it is. The managing director of Infineon, who gave his vision for Dresden in a local newspaper just yesterday, said his desire or his hope is that Dresden doesn't need to be explained anymore. And that's also my personal ambition. We want to be, as Silicon Saxony, the platform for neutral exchange on industry that explains semiconductors and software and is recognized as what it is, internationally friendly environment for top tech talents from the globe.